Hello and welcome to Talking Mixed Ability. I'm Holly Straker Humphreys and I'm here with the world's first podcast that explores breaking down barriers to mainstream sport through the mixed ability model. We'll go behind the scenes to speak to founders, organisers, players and families to understand the power of sports in changing the world. And now I'm joined by Alan Craughwell and I'm going to let Alan introduce himself. Over to you, Alan.
Hi, my name is Alan Craughwell. It's quite difficult and long name to spell. When I was a kid, I would have difficulty spelling it. But so I'm the founder of the very first mixed ability rugby team in Ireland, and the director of IMART Cork 2022, and also managing director of Mixed Ability Sports Ireland. This was how I got involved in mixed ability.
Yeah, so tell us, where did the Mixed Ability Island journey begin?
About, I think, 9 years ago at this stage, I had a shoulder injury from swimming, of all sports, so far away from rugby. And I went to my local physio and I picked up a Rugby World magazine, and it's where I saw an article with the Connectley Warriors and the Bradford Bumblebees. I was working in the area of disabilities at the time, and working with adults who had intellectual disabilities, who are fanatic Munster fans, and it's just fantastic that we're here in the home of Munster Rugby here in Cork, and some of the signage you might not, well, obviously you can't see it in the podcast, but over us is nothing is impossible. And I just thought, like, these guys want to play rugby. They were constantly slagging me because I'm a Connacht rugby fan. In the context of Irish rugby, we'd be the poor relations. And so I said, these guys need to feel and understand what it's like to play real rugby.
And I guess, what can the impact be on some of the people's lives that you've seen as you've brought mixed ability over to Ireland?
I'll give you one really powerful, and it's probably a very simple story. One of our players, he had his birthday, 21st birthday, and you know, we have a players' WhatsApp group, and the message went around it. It's Nathan's birthday, 21st. Here are the details. You know, off you go. His mum, his brother, and his sister turned up to training the next Friday, in tears. For the simple reason, Nathan never had anybody other than his own family members at any of his birthdays. And now he had a team, and like obviously they went, and there was the drink was flowing, the party was happening. So, but for him to have his own teammates and his own friends turn up at his birthday, I think that really is the antithesis of what exactly this is about. It's about breaking down the barriers in terms and creating real friendships and something special through sport. You know, it's something that we probably take for granted, you know, especially if you don't have a disability. You know, we can go to bars, we can go to clubs, we can socialise, we can do what we want, we can have ownership of ourselves. But when you have a barrier or a disability, sometimes that's more difficult. And that little simple thing of just turn up to somebody's birthday, how cool is that?
That's amazing, really touching story. You can also see that we've got a banner up here in the room, and it says, we're changing the world through mixed ability, and I think that's just such a small but great example of how the power of sports can be used to challenge some of the societal boundaries and challenges that we see in the world today.
I think we're challenged by the whole idea of putting labels on people. We're challenged by the idea that we have to explain everything, and that we must do our best to do everything we can for everybody. Look, in terms of inclusion, I suppose my idea and my understanding of inclusion, I'm no expert, but like when it comes to the starting point, and especially when, you know, speaking to, say, groups like clubs or national governing bodies, or you know, even just in the corporate world, you know, where do you start? What do you do? And the biggest starting point is your name. Your name is the name you were given. The label that you may carry because of whatever, you know, maybe it's because of birth or whatever it is, whatever happened to you in terms of a barrier that's causing, that's a label. So the starting point has to be the name, and that really works in sport. Because if you want the ball, you've got to call the person's name. You're not going to call, hey, you, the person with Asperger's, who I can't remember your name is, but or the person who clearly has Down syndrome. First of all, the person who's going to have, say, maybe Down syndrome or has Asperger's is going to look at you and they're going to say, what the, did you just call me? That's not my name. So, like, that is the biggest leveler, and I think that is one of the biggest lessons that everybody can learn, and it's so simple. It's the starting point, it's the comfort zone of being called your name.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something else there in the power of mixed ability in terms of there can be so much fear around saying the wrong thing or lack of understanding of certain minorities or disabilities, and I think mixed ability, from what we've experienced, just levels that playing field. You're all in the sport together, working together as a team, and it breaks down some of those barriers.
Yeah, like, and I think them barriers are always going to be there, and I think the fear of making a mistake around the barriers and the fear of not actually the fear of not saying the right thing and saying the wrong thing. We have to say the wrong thing to get to the right thing, and that's the part where you have that conversation, interaction. One of the guys who plays with us, he's your typical junior player, no teeth in his head. Obviously, has stood up on his, he's probably had a few scrapes out on the pitch. And one of the things that he would have said, like, was, what do I call them? And the word "them" to me notes that there's a difference between you and me. And not to use any bad language, I don't use a lot of bad language, but what I would have said to him is, call him by his bleep name, because I knew he'd understand that. Yeah. That was my way of being inclusive with him. And what he said back to me says, right so. And that just leveled it. That was inclusion for him. And that chap has been probably one of the biggest stalwarts and drivers of our team, and it was just that simple thing of leveling it. And again, I brought it back to the name, but it was the approach and how I knew I had to approach him a little bit different. I didn't have to go explain the ins and outs. I didn't have to give the other person's medical history or whatever it is, or diagnosis or psychology notes to him, because he's not interested. He wanted to play the game. So that's what sport does. Sport creates the familiarity and the familiar ground, the familiar setting. We're here in Musgrave Park at the third edition of the Mixed Ability World Tournament, and it's just the familiar setting of a rugby tournament. We have the pitches, we have the socialising, and it just works. I like to call it a little bit of magic that works,
For sure.
Yeah.
You can feel the magic as you walk around.
Oh, like it's the energy. It's something that's to behold in terms of, it's the most infectious thing that's going. And why not use the vehicle of sport? And one of the keys, I suppose, of mixed ability is that we don't grade or classify people by whatever disability or barrier they have. If somebody wants to identify themselves and mark themselves, fine, yeah, go for it. But, it really helps to eliminate that kind of idea that you have to be here to, if you don't have a disability, you're here to volunteer. You're not here to volunteer. You're here to be part of something and be part of experiencing with another person. And I think that's it's unique.
For sure. Yeah. What do you think it means to Cork to be hosting IMART this year?
Well, look, this is possibly the largest inclusive sporting event in Europe this year. I mean, that alone is fantastic. There's been a fantastic team behind this in terms of project team that really, we've worked tirelessly to make sure that this is a world-class event. In terms of Irish sport, to bring an event of this scale outside of, say, the normal, which would be the capital, Dublin, and bring it down to Cork, it's massive. It's something that I feel that, like, the general public and the sporting public of Cork really didn't know or were unsure. So to me, that's exactly how mixed ability starts. You've got this little bit of certain period where you're, I don't know about that. But like after the opening ceremony last night and the games are up and running, I think we've won the hearts and minds of a lot of people.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So my final question, Alan, what's next for mixed ability in Ireland?
This circus can't just stop here in Cork and not roll on. So I suppose in that respect, we have set up Mixed Ability Sport Ireland, and we have a working partnership with International Mixed Ability Sports. They've been pivotal and key in terms of driving the international movement of mixed ability. So in terms of the island of Ireland, our goal is to promote what we're doing across multiple sports. Obviously, with the tournament, we have actually a rowing competition coming in, and we're working with the FAI, the Irish Football Association, with a small group of teams, and we're hoping to pilot this in more sports, and also to develop our people or experts by experience, the guys who maybe have a barrier or disability, so that they can actually, go and spread the message around inclusion and diversity across multiple sectors, be it in the healthcare or be it in, corporate sector, and just, I suppose, show that there is options for people within sport within the island of Ireland. And at that part, I suppose it is the next phase of this is to seek funding to kind of keep this going. And we had our Taoiseach, which is our Prime Minister, our Minister for Finance, and Minister for Foreign Affairs here at the opening ceremony. So from a governmental point of view, get the buy-in of Sport Ireland, get the buy-in of a number of stakeholders and the corporate sector, which have been really good in terms of sponsoring it and funding what we're doing, so that they can buy in and see that this is like a generational change. It's not often, I don't think it's very unique that you get a chance in sport that hasn't been kind of done already, and this is something that's very, I suppose, historic in that from that point of view. So with Ireland, the nature of the Irish is welcoming, so it's to make sure that we can continue on this trail.
Perfect. And on that note, how do people find you? How do they follow you? How do they get in touch?
I suppose you can reach out towards IMART. IMARTWorldCup.org is our website for the tournament. You can follow us on all the socials at Mixed Ability Sport Ireland. Your usuals, your Facebooks, your Twitters, your TikToks. We're on TikTok as well too. Yeah. Oh, really? Like I've been educated on this entertainment channel, and then just look. Whoever wants to reach out to me via email, Crockwell at mixedabilitysports.org. I'd be happy to link in with anybody in terms of that. And it's just fantastic to have the third edition of this tournament here. We got rained off with COVID, but I'm telling you, a pandemic couldn't even stop this train.
Love it. Alan, we'll let you get back to the tournament. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.